Hey guys, Dr. Blackman here. We're going to go over the urinary system models, focusing on one primarily. Again, follow along with me in your lab student handouts. Okay, so we have a kidney here, we have a kidney here, we have a kidney here, right? There's a couple structures that are more easy to identify on one kidney than the other. The outside of the kidney, it surrounds it like saran wrap to kind of protect it, to insulate it, etc. Right? That's called the renal capsule. So actually a lot of fat on the outside of it too to protect it. The outer region of the kidney is called the renal cortex. So you can see that here in this model over here. There would be the renal cortex. Okay. Then the inside here is the renal medulla. Okay. Remember, if you have a cortex and a medulla in an organ, the cortex will always be on the outside, and the medulla will always be on the inside. Okay. This portion here, the really innermost portion, right? That's called the renal sinus. Right. That's where the urine collecting mechanisms are. A lot of fat in there as well. Okay. Because these structures look like pyramids, right? They're called renal pyramids. Okay. And where the cortex extends deep into the medulla, that's called a renal column. Okay, so here would be a renal column. There's a blood vessel traveling in that renal column. Here's a renal column here. It's actually a lot easier to see on this model, right? Here's a renal pyramid. Here's a renal pyramid. So this would be the renal column between these two renal pyramids. Okay, so once that fluid travels past this boundary here, it changes from being called filtrate to now being called urine, because once it crosses this border here, you can't change it anymore. Okay, so that structure is very important. That's called the renal papilla. Okay, so there's one renal papilla over here. There's a renal papilla. There's a renal papilla here. Okay, so this would be, sorry about that. This would be a minor calyx, okay, where the urine collects. There would be a minor calyx there, a minor calyx there, a minor calyx there, a minor calyx there. Where those minor calyces merge to form larger structures, that's called a major calyx. Okay, so these minor calyces coming in, there's a major calyx right there. Okay, here's another example on this model. Right. There would be a major calyx, right, because it accepts the urine coming in from several of those minor calyces. So again, there'd be a major calyx right there, for example. Okay, this portion here, where the major calyces come together, it's like this storage basin for the urine that's being produced. That's called the renal pelvis. Okay, and then the urine moves from the renal pelvis down into this tube here. That's the ureter that leads to the urinary bladder. Okay, so again, the parts of the renal sinus, you've got the renal papilla, right, the major calyx, right, the minor calyx here, minor calyx, minor calyx. Again, they merge to form what would be a major calyx here, a major calyx here. Again, this would be the renal pelvis, and then the ureter. Okay, so lots of structures there. Don't let those confuse you. We got to make sure we know the blood supply to the kidney as well. This artery here that's bringing oxygenated blood to the kidney to be filtered, that's the renal artery. Okay, in this case, it would be the right renal artery because this is the right kidney. The blue, taking deoxygenated blood that has been filtered out of the kidney, that's the renal vein. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about these structures called nephrons. Okay, a nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidney. Each kidney has millions of nephrons, and each nephron works independently of other nephrons to filter that blood to make the urine. Okay, so it's showing one nephron here, sort of in the tissue of the kidney. So we're going to take that one nephron and magnify it so we can see the parts of that nephron better. Okay, and that's what we're seeing here. Okay, this is the renal cortex up here. Okay, and this is the renal medulla down here. Okay, so these structures, there's 1, 2, 3, right? That portion of the nephron is called the renal corpuscle. And the renal corpuscle is made of capillaries called a glomerulus, where filtration occurs, and then the capsule surrounding the glomerulus called the glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule, okay, where the fluid collects. So those two things together, the glomerulus and its surrounding glomerular capsule, makes up the renal corpuscle. And there's 1, 2, 3 renal corpuscles that are shown here, okay? But now we have to talk about the other parts of the nephron in addition to the renal corpuscle. That's the renal tubule. So we'll talk about the different parts of the renal tubule now. The first part here, which is close to the glomerulus, and it's twisting, so it's convoluted. It's another way of saying twisted. That's the proximal convoluted tubule, okay? And you see here how this tubule loops down into the medulla and then back up into the cortex? That's called the nephron loop, or the loop of Henle. Okay, has two names. You can also break this loop into two portions. This portion here that goes down is the descending limb of the nephron loop. And then this structure that goes back up is the ascending limb of the nephron loop. Okay, then you get up here where it's twisting again. So that's farther away from the glomerulus. So that's the distal convoluted tubule. And the distal convoluted tubule empties into this structure. And actually, if you look here, there's several nephrons that empty into that same structure. So this nephron's emptying there, this nephron's emptying there. So this structure here, which collects that fluid from the nephrons, that's the collecting duct. Okay, so that collecting duct collects all that fluid and then sends it on down into the renal sinus. Okay, so now we're going to take one of these renal corpuscles and we're going to magnify it so that we can see what that renal corpuscle is made of. Okay, so let's do that here. Okay, this is one renal corpuscle. Okay, and we've actually taken the top of it off so we can see the structures underneath better. Okay, this blood vessel that's bringing blood to the renal corpuscle to be filtered, that's the afferent arteriole. Okay, remember afferent goes towards something. Okay, in this case it's going towards the glomerulus. So afferent arteriole, okay, the blood's going out of the glomerulus by way of the efferent arteriole. Okay, efferent means going away from something or exiting. So afferent arteriole, efferent arteriole. The capillaries here, where the process of filtration occurs, very important process in the kidney, that's called the glomerulus. This structure here, where that fluid, which is called filtrate, collects, okay, it collects in this capsule surrounding the glomerulus, okay, and that capsule has two names, okay, it's called either the glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule, okay, and then we have the start of the renal tubule, and as we know, the first part of that renal tubule is going to be your proximal convoluted tubule, okay, so that filtrate is going to travel down here and then continue into the other parts of the renal tubule, okay, so the kidney is a very complex organ with a lot of different structures, but hopefully that helped you. Good luck, everyone, and keep up the hard work.